mean, come on, man. What is even that?
What the hell is even that?
Going to be taking a look at a Smith & Wesson today. What Smith & Wesson? The display Smith & I'm just kidding. It's the SD9 2.0. Don't you forget it. 2.0. Came with a grease pack in a cardboard box, a lime green colored lock, and one magazine. One magazine's all you get. So if you have the original SD9 VE, you have yourself a extra magazine or two that you can use should you choose to buy this one. That should save you 30, 40 bucks, how much ever they cost. I'm really not sure, but it did only come with one magazine, and it came in the cardboard box. And here it is, the SD9 2.0. We did have this at the range yesterday. It is a 16 round magazine. We did have it at the range yesterday, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a second. This is a safe firearm, nothing in the chamber. We're good to go. So, I have never been a huge fan of Smith & Wesson polymer frame guns or even their AR-15s. Especially the ones with the extended beaver tail grips that they put on them. That's got that ½ inch gap between the bottom of the grip and the back of the hand guard. I don't know. It's like, I mean, a web of your hand gets caught in there and pinches it. I mean, I don't know. They ain't figured. That's a story for another day. Whatever. But either way, never been a huge fan. I will say up front, full disclosure, never been a huge fan of Smith & Wesson firearms. Unless, of course, it was one of their revolvers. I like their revolvers. They're sexy, they're well built, and they perform well. But other than that, just never have been a huge fan of Smith & Wesson. That's not to say that I'm dogging the firearm or what its intention is. Its intention is to be a full-size, budget-friendly firearm for those that might not can afford an H&K or an FN or maybe even a Glock. And so far as that goes, it definitely serves that purpose. Just like the original one, it was flawless at the range. It was accurate enough. It gave absolutely no problems. We put 124, 115, some Remington, some cheap crap. It ate it all. It done fine. Absolutely. My conclusion at the end was that if this is in your budget, in your wheelhouse, this is all you can get, you can definitely, in my opinion, trust your life with this gun, so long as you practice with what you carry, right? So I'm not going to get into the lengths, weight, height, and all of that good stuff. You can find all that out in about 15 seconds on the website. And again, it's just a remake of something they already made. So the differences are between these plastic 3 white dot sights, which can be easily pushed out and replaced. I did that on my old one. I put some fiber optics on here. It does have these lines or serrations dulled out across the top, which is new from the original. And it still has this peephole or loaded chamber indicator, if you will, up here at the back of the barrel and the slide. So coming down the side here, to me, again, I don't have my 40 VE anymore, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but it looks cleaner, as in shinier. The finish looks a little bit less matte, if you will, and it definitely looks a little cleaner and shinier. And the serrations on this thing are super, super deep and more defined. Definitely easier to grab a hold of, and just overall looks better. It just looks sexier than the original. Other than that, and of course the trigger, which we'll talk about here in just a second, there really are not a whole lot of differences whatsoever. It's basically the same gun, okay? Would I buy this one if I already had the original just for the sake of buying it, to keep it, to hold on to it forever? No, I wouldn't. I bought it because we're going to do the review on it, right? But if I already had the original was fine. It functioned fine. I actually liked the trigger better in the original, although it was horrible too. I did end up putting an Apex trigger in my original one, which is a super easy thing to do. So if you can afford to do that and you do want to carry this gun, save up your money, whatever the case is, put you an Apex trigger in here. If you have even the slightest bit of mechanical ability, it's a super easy thing to do. So you can certainly do that. You do have the 2-slot pick rail down here for your light and lasers. There is nothing ambi on this gun. Takes down just like your traditional Glock or a lot of other handguns with your takedown tabs here on the side. Pull the trigger, pull the slide off. It is a plastic guide rod, just like again on the original 116 round magazine. But like so on Smith & Wesson, the Shield, the M&P, the FDE, and some of the finishes that they've done on their guns, especially on the 2.0, I like the fish scale serrations on those guns. I've had almost all of them, and it's not just because I wanted to do a review on it. It was because I was drawn to the slide, because I do actually think that a lot of their slides are well done. They're sexy. They got that melanite finish on them. It's very, very, just an awesome finish. I mean, I've skipped them across the concrete driveway and not put a mark on them. It's a very well done finish, and I've always been drawn to the look of the slide on the Smith & Wesson polymer frame pistols. It's got curb appeal, if you will. But then as you come down to the frame, it's like someone forgot to edge the driveway. You know, I guess I know why it is that people, that real estate people talk about curb appeal and first impressions, if you will. You look at the slides, you're like, oh man, that's nice. Start manipulating the slide with those fish scale looking serrations on there. It's got nice cuts and lines in it, and then you come down to the frame and you're like, man, why'd you forget to edge my driveway? You know, I mean, it just, I don't like the sandpaper consistency on the lowers, the grip panels. With their steel frame that they just come out with, it's not half bad, but you know, it sticks to your clothing if you carry it outside or even inside the waistband. Your shirt gets stuck on the sandpaper lower there. You end up wanting to wrap it in a Hogue rubber grip or something. That's not the case on this one, although the lower is the same as the original, and I feel the same way about the lower on this one. I like the slide. It's very clean for a budget-friendly gun, but then you get down here to the bottom and you're like, forgot to edge my driveway again. You know, it's just very cheap looking, feeling plastic. And again, that feels much the same way on some of Smith's more expensive guns, right? It does have this very sharp stippling, if you will, on the back and the front here. I think Trey even mentioned at the range that it was digging into him pretty good. It was very cold yesterday morning when we were shooting, so maybe that attributed to that. And then you have this less than aggressive texturing here on the side, which I personally am okay with. I don't like a super grippy texture, anything that might snag on my shirt, because I carry outside the waist and I don't want anything snagging on my clothes. So I kind of like this. I'm okay with that. I mean, if you get a man's grip on the gun, I don't see how the texturing and stuff is really going to affect anything. Maybe just feeling the hand overall, I guess. Do have these memory pads up here in front of the trigger guard. The trigger guard is decently large. We didn't shoot with gloves, so I don't know if you could get in and out of there pretty good if you had gloves. The mag release, I am able to manipulate that without really changing my grip, so that's good. Again, nothing ambi on the gun whatsoever. It does feel good in the hand, and I guess maybe because of more of the cutouts here, it does feel a little bit lighter. Trey mentioned that also at the range, and I think also that attributed a little bit to some of the, what I believe to be a little bit of an excessive muzzle rise. The recoil seemed a little heavier on it than what it should be for a full-size 9mm, but again, flawless at the range. Once you figure out that horrible trigger, I said it, and this sight setup, it is decently accurate. Now, with all of that being said, let's get down to the trigger, because everyone that mentioned the SD9 and the 2.0, even one of my local FFLs, when I asked if he had one, he told me, I looked at it, I seen nothing different on the gun other than the trigger. Immediately when I looked at it, I knew the serrations were different on the side. I knew that the serration across the top was not on the original one. I was looking at those things. All he mentioned was the trigger, and let's face it, that's all anybody else talks about too. Oh, it's got a flat face trigger. You're like, okay, fine, you know. Now, what I'm going to say about the trigger is not dogging the gun. I'm not a trigger snob. If you're going to carry this, if this is in your wheelhouse, you're a budget-friendly guy, and that's what you got to get, fine, great. Absolutely. My conclusion was that you can absolutely trust this gun with your life. It is accurate. It will function for you. I believe that wholeheartedly, but the trigger is horrible. And if you believe, if you have this gun, the new one, the 2.0, and you believe that the trigger is good, I genuinely, with the utmost sincerity, I feel sorry for you because you have been trigger depraved. I'm just telling you, it is not a good trigger. Is it the worst trigger I've ever seen? No, but it's definitely not a good one. And it never fails when we put up the reviews on budget-friendly guns, if we say one truthful thing. I'm not saying a bad thing, I'm saying a truthful thing. We say one truthful thing that might be not speaking or praising the gun, they come out of the woodwork. When I put up the original short just showing the trigger on this gun, and I would encourage you, maybe I can get Trey to put a link up to that one. I would encourage you to take a look at that. And it reset basically 3 times. And you can plainly see that in the video. It was up close and personal. This is nothing that I was just making up, right? And I put the video up, and you can't make this stuff up. Again, I'm going to do a voice. Don't know who the guy was or how he talks. It's just what I do. But his response was, can't make this up. This is the only guy on YouTube that said anything bad about the trigger on the SD9 2.0. He's literally the only one. I say we don't believe him. Oh, okay. So you don't believe the video either? You don't believe the up close, what I showed you clearly on the video? You don't believe that either? Like, if I were to a Glock or an FN or a CZ Shadow or a Dan Wesson or, you know, H&K, you take a plethora of other ones. If we were to say they had not so great triggers, man, there'd be people wanting us at a line at a football stadium to sign autographs, patting us on the back. You know, why is that? Why is that? Why? Because it can only be for one reason and one reason only, whether it be because they can only afford a budget-friendly gun, which if that's all you can afford, go get this. Or they are cheap butts and they, you know, bought this for the reason of being a cheap butt, and they want to convince themselves that their $300 purchase was justified and as good as an FN, a Glock, a CZ Shadow, an H&K. They want to convince themselves it's just as good, and they don't want to hear anything to the contrary. That can be all it is. Because all I'm doing is telling the absolute truth about my experience and about the gun. And I will say this. Again, I would like Trey to put up a link in the comments or somewhere. He does all the editing, so we'll see if he can put up a link to that video. If not, I encourage you to go over and find the short that we put up on the trigger for this gun, right? So I will say in that video, the trigger was resetting 3 times. So it'd be 1 reset, 2 reset, and then the third one was the one that actually, you know, reset it and was able to pull the trigger. I mean, come on, man. What is even that? Anyway, whatever. Yeah, I mean, you know. So anyway, strike this thing back. Just crazy, crazy grit. I mean, you can literally hear it. I can feel it, but you can literally hear it as well. It hits what you believe to be a wall, but it just pulls right through it. There is no defined wall. It just pulls right through it. it seems to stop up short toward the back there and then break, but it's just incredibly unpredictable, and that would take away some from the accuracy that this gun is capable of, right? So that's why I say if you can afford it, put your Apex trigger in there. So you come back on the reset again, grit. So that sounded and felt very tactile. Now, it didn't sound tactile, but it pushed back on my finger as though it was resetting. But as you can see, it did not. So there's one, felt like it reset. I believe that was the reset. Let's see. Indeed it was. So, hey, it's only doing it twice now. In the video, it was doing it 3 times. Maybe it'll work itself out. I'm not even being a smart aleck about that. Maybe it will. But even if it works itself out, the trigger is still not great. Okay? It's not a CZ Shadow or a Springfield Echelon 1911 trigger. It's just not. You know, it's just not. That's just truthful. I'm not dogging the gun. It's just not a great trigger. Anyway, that is my take on it. We encourage you guys to go over, check out the range video we just put up. Maybe you get a little bit more of our thoughts on it. But again, just like with that, in conclusion, I can recommend this gun if it is something that if it's all you can afford. Definitely, you can trust your life with it, no doubt about that. High capacity, get you another magazine, and you have something that you definitely can defend yours and your family's life with. Great budget-friendly option. Thanks for watching today. Please be sure to subscribe. Tell your friends and family where they can find the best, most truthful, down-to-earth, blue-collar gun reviews on YouTube. Thanks again for watching, and be blessed.